Hello everyone. Today we learn regarding Bell's palsy. Okay, so first of all, what is that and how it can be occurred and what is the reason behind that, how we can cure that. Okay, so first of all, starting with the introduction. So in that introduction, it is a facial now is a mixed now that is containing the following. Okay, so let's see which all are the contents. So fibers for motor output to the facial muscles. Okay, so facial now mixed now. So that is including the fiber for the motor output to the facial muscles. Okay, they can be provided the fibers into the facial muscles. Then parasympathetic fibers to the lacrimal and the submandibular and the sublingual salivary glands. Then the afferent fibers for taste for the anterior to third of the tongue, somatic afferent from the external auditory canal and the pinna. Okay, then so you can see here. So these are the branches for the facial nerve. So in that first one is the temporal branches, then the zygomatic branches, then the buccal branches, then the marginal mandibular branch, then the cervical branch. Okay, so these are the branches for the facial nerve. Then introduction. Okay. Cheryl Bales of the England first described the acute paralysis of the cranial nerve 7. Okay, so the facial nerve is the 7 nerve. Then in 1920, about one half of the all cases of facial palsy qualified for the label Bell's palsy, defined as an acute peripheral facial nerve palsy of unknown cause. Okay, so we are not known that how it can be occur. So that is the acute peripheral facial nerve palsy. Definition. Okay, so definition of the Bell's palsy. It is defined as an acute, temporary, partially or totally weakness of the paralysis of the face. Okay, so totally or the partially weakness of the what face. Okay, so into the face they can be either it may be partially or the either it may be totally weakness or the paralysis. So that is characterized by the weakness or paralysis of the one side of the face, facial droop, drooling, and the inability to close the eye. So in that person who are having the Bell's palsy, they can't be close the eyes, then the facial drooping, then the drooling, and the inability to close the eye. So it is a one type of the weakness or the paralysis of the face. Okay, then the facial nerve, that is the Bell's palsy. Then epidemiology, age between the 15 to 60 years, then born in 5,000 people, then male and female equally affected. So there is a no that male will be high or the female will be high, but in that male or the female both are equally affected. Risk factors. So which are the risk factors that cause the Bell's palsy? So in that exact cause will be unknown. Okay, as earlier we have seen, that is the unknown reason or the unknown cause. Then pregnancy, especially in the third trimester or in the first postpartum week, risk is the 3 times higher. Okay, so in this condition, the risk will be high. The diabetes is present in about 5 to 10% of the patient. Herpes simplex virus, that is HSV, then the herpes zoster, then due to the virus also this will be occur. Lyme's disease, then the other infection including cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, then the adenovirus, rubella virus, mumps, influenza B, and coccidiosis virus. Okay, these all are the viruses also affected due to occur the Bell's palsy, and inactivated intranasal influenza vaccine. So these all are the risk factors. Pathogenesis. So a herpes simplex mediated viral inflammatory or the immune mechanism. So due to that, polymerase chain reaction DNA testing supports the notion of anoxal spread and the multiplication of reactivated neurotropic virus leading to the inflammation, demyelination, and the palsy. Due to that, the demyelination occurs. Herpes simplex virus activation has become widely accepted as a likely cause of the Bell's palsy in most cases. Okay, so these are the signs and symptoms. You can see here into the pictures. Headache will be occurred. Then inability to close an eyelid. Okay, so that also the signs and symptoms of the Bell's palsy. Then the facial drooping in the corner of the mouth. Okay, so one side face will be down. Then drooling and changing in the amount of the saliva production, decreased ability to taste. Okay, person or the patient can't be able to taste. Then changes in the quantity of tears production. Okay, so decrease in the amount of the tear production. Increase the sensitivity to sound, pain behind the ear. The person can feel the pain behind the ear, then the pain around the jaw. Person may feel the pain around the jaw. So these are the signs and symptoms for the Bell's palsy. Clinical features. Which are the clinical features? So in that, sudden onset, usually over hours of unilateral facial paralysis. Common finding includes the eyebrow sagging, inability to close the eye, disappearance of the nasolabial fold, decreased the hearing, hyperacusis, and or loss of the taste sensation on anterior two-thirds of the tongue. Then client cannot voluntarily show his or her teeth on the paralyzed side. Person can't be able to see their teeth and show their teeth, but can show them with emotional stimulation such as cursing, smiling, or laughter. This phenomena is called voluntary emotional dissociation. Then peripheral venous central lesion. Sparing of the forehead muscles is suggestive of a central, that is the upper motor neurons, that lesion because of the bilateral innervation to this area. Central activation of the facial is both of the volunteers, automatic or the emotional in the region, that and the facial nerve is the final common pathway. So this is the lack of the dissociation. There is an absence of both voluntary and the spontaneous movement. So in this absence of the both, like voluntary and the spontaneous movement, and that indicates a lower motor neuron, that is peripheral lesion. Then diagnostic criteria. Which are the diagnostic criteria that will be performed to identify the seven cranial nerve will be affected. This is the diffuse facial nerve involvement manifested by paralysis of the facial muscles with or without loss of the taste on the anterior two-thirds of the tongue and the alert secretion of the lacrimal and the salivary glands. Onset is acute over a day or two. The causes is progressive, reaching maximal clinical weakness, paralysis within 3 weeks or less from the first day of visible weakness, and the recovery or some degree of the function is present within 6 months. So recovery chances will be within 6 months, and associated prodromal ear pain and dysarthritis is variable. Then diagnostic test. So EMG, that is the electro-diagnostic study. Okay, then now conduction study. So from that, you can identify how much affected nerves or cranial nerves that will be damaged or that will be paralyzed. Then imaging studies. So in that CT scan and the MRI, we can see. Then the screening, that is the blood test or the blood studies also we can do. Then the facial nerve stimulation. It is the most useful when performed within 2 weeks after progression to complete the facial paralysis in case in which the surgical decompression might be considered. So this is in that this will be of very useful for the performing within 2 weeks. So after the progression of the facial paresis, then schema test for lacrimination, stapedial reflex, and evaluation of the taste and salivation have only moderate accuracy and are of little parectial benefits. So you can see here, this is the taste. So in that normal range will be of 50 to 25 ml, then 10 to 40, that is a suspected low TR, then the less than 10 mm inadequate TS. So due to this filter paper, we can identify the normal range and how much affected. Then in the first days after symptoms onset, the Blink's reflex can confirm the peripheral region of weakness and assess the degree of the external conduction block. Then at 20 to 30 days after onset, needle EMG may provide confirmation of the muscles denervation and degree of the external damage. Then MST, that is the maximal stimulation test, uses the supraparethroid stimulation to achieve the maximal stimulation, and response is subjectively observed by the tester. It is of doubtful value. Nerve excitability threshold testing is similar, but tester attempts to quantify the current required to produce a threshold response. A critical value 3.5 MA is said correlate with the 90% degeneration on motor and C as and implies a poor progress. Other investigation, that is serological testing for Lyme's disease. Okay, they're showing that ELISA test will be useful. Then the parotid gland biopsy, it is suggested for the patient with the acute onset of facial paralysis when there is no recovery and imaging studies are negative at 7 months. After the 7 months, we can do that. Then treatment. Eye care. So what is eye care? So in that artificial tears, we can use during the weakness or during the Bell's palsy. So artificial tears should be applied every hour while the patient is awake. Okay, so by the awakening the patient, we can apply the artificial tear, and ophthalmic ointment should be used at night. So we can use, or the patient may use the ointment ophthalmic at the night time. Then protective glasses or goggles should be prescribed. So by that we can help, that is helpful for the if the patient may go outside. Patches can be used at night, but tab should not be placed directly on the eyelid since the patches could slip and abrade the cornea. Rarely transfer the temporary implementation of the cold weight into the upper lid is required. Then glucocorticoids and the antiviral therapy. So in that prednisolone 6 mg daily for 5 days, then 10 mg daily for total treatment length of the 10 days. Okay, so total 10 days, this medicine will be given. Then valacyclovir 1000 mg 3 times daily for the 7 days. Then the prednisolone 10 days for plus valacyclovir 7 days. Okay, so that will be 2 medication we can given to the patient who are having the Bell's palsy to reduce the symptoms. The rate of complete recovery was significantly higher in the combined valacyclovir and the prednisolone. So we can give in the combination of these two drugs. Other interventions like surgical decompression, it is not currently recommended. So in that, permanent unilateral hearing loss is the most common serious side effect among the patient undergoing the facial nerve decompression. So that is the side effect of the surgical decompression. Other risks were reported with a middle cranial fossa craniotomy, include seizures, leakage of the CSF, and the facial nerve injury. So these all are the risk factors. also occurred, including the seizures and the CSF leakage, then the injury into the facial nerve. In the nerve stimulation, electrical nerve stimulation has been used to try promote the motor recovery in the patient with the Bell's palsy. So that will be a part of the recovery. Long-term sequential follow-up is essential for the eye care. Psychological support, we need to give the psychological support and management of long-term sequentials related to Bell's palsy. Then botulinum toxin injection may benefit patient with the synkinesis, facial spasm, and the hyperlacrimation. So this is used for this. All are the that is symptoms that will be a decrease to given to the botulinum toxin injection. Then cosmetic and the functional improvement may be possible with the facial elimination surgery. So you can see here what is the difference between this. Thank you.